Well, welcome to the Caregiver Cup podcast, and welcome listeners and YouTube viewers. So, I'm Kathy Vanden Heuvel. I am very excited again to share another episode of the Caregiver Cup podcast. As a matter of fact, this one is all about why friendships change as caregivers. And I want to start out by sharing something that happened to me last week, and then I'll lead into the topic a little bit more. She asked me the question that made me perk up in my chair. And I felt so grateful that she had finally asked, or somebody finally asked me this question. It was a question that really triggered me. And as my caregiving years went on, it just was like a sore that would just keep breaking open for me, and I want to share the emotional side in today's podcast in a story further where it wasn't my best moment. So, let me tell you a little bit about the she person. Last week, I was interviewed for an upcoming event called Mid Series. I have to make sure I say it right, Midlife Women Series. And I'm being interviewed for caregiver stress and burnout and ways to work through it. And I have a great opportunity by being interviewed and um, asked the question from Sheree Clark, and she's a midlife courage coach. And do you want to know what the question was? Yeah, it's really basic. And I'm going to show it on the screen here once. And let me see here once. Well, that's not the question. Let me see what the question is. Here it is. What advice do you have for a friend of a caregiver? It's such a simple and basic question. So you're probably asking, why, Kathy, are you getting all bent out of shape of it? For me, it has tons of baggage. And for me, it's been bottled up. I don't know about yourself. And so today in the episode, I want to go ahead and talk about why friendships change, and then the whole part about why this question may trigger you, why friendships come and go, or our friends ghost you, and some friends are overly helpful, and how you can work through feeling isolated, uh, getting this question asked of you, and then you just you're just not yourself. That's what I'm trying to say. So here's kind of the length of it. It was Saturday morning, and this is why Sherry's question triggered me. And I'll lead on to why how I answered it in just a bit. But it was Saturday morning, and I am in this rush at the grocery store because my mom wasn't feeling her best. We just got back. It was just about a month. We just got back from Dennis's stem cell transplant. Things were working really well for him, and he was progressing like he normally could at that time. But my mom must not have felt good while I was away, and she was sleeping a lot and not herself. And I thought, well, you know what? Kathy on this Saturday morning is going to go grocery shopping. I'm going to get her some healthy food in the house, get some of her favorite snacks, get some things for soup so I can make some soup for her. And I'm going to move over there. But the whole time I'm like, what is going on? Why is mom not feeling well? And I'm pushing my cart up and down the aisle, getting the things that I need. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see a friend. And I wave to her and she goes, Kathy, like that. And I finished my aisle, came back down the aisle, and her first words out of her mouth were, how is Dennis? And then her second question was, how is your mom? And being in the mood that I was in and having this trigger me for years and years, because I was in this caregiver role for 5.5 years. And I came out with the most rudest and obnoxious answer. I said, I am not doing good. I didn't even answer her question. You should have saw her face. She was like, she did not want, she was like, "Oh my gosh." And I said, "I'm totally overwhelmed. This is too much for me." I started going down this rabbit hole of victim mentality. And then I stopped and I said, "I am so, so sorry." I apologized, telling her that it's just not a good morning. And then went on to answer her question. But in reality, that's what triggers me as a caregiver. It's one of the little pet peeves that really bothers me, because the focus is always has to be on your loved one, rightfully so. But when they don't even recognize you and all that you do, and knowing what you're going through, nobody asks you about you. Or when they do ask about you, they go ahead and usually give you a comment or a motivation saying, "You got this. Dennis is so lucky to have you," that kind of thing. So I want to get into how I answered Sherry's question. And I went in to say the biggest advice I have for a caregiver is to ask how the caregiver is doing. So if my friend came to me and it said, what can I do for you?" And I would be, "Just ask me how I'm doing. Just go ahead and recognize me," because as caregivers, we are so isolated. And so that's what it is. I also think about some of the stronger things that a friend could ask you, as a caregiver. "Can I stop by this week and bring over a meal? You let me know what your diet restrictions are, what your loved one can and can't eat. I want to take a little bit off of your shoulders and do something for you so that you don't have to spend so much time in the kitchen or prepping." Or they can say, "Is there anything else that I can do to help?" And that's what my friend said to me that Saturday. Uh, Another thing, "Can I bring over your favorite cup of coffee? I'm off on Friday, so I could bring it over to you, and maybe even we could sit and enjoy a little bit of company. When's a good time?" Or, "When's a good time that I can text or FaceTime you? I know that I don't want to get you in a bad time. So tell me what the best times of the day that I can do that. I want to stay in touch." That kind of thing. So that's where I'm at. So I hope your mind is going like racing right now. As caregivers, we are providing this beautiful, beautiful gift to our loved one. We make significant sacrifices. Yes, I said significant. We are pushed to unbelievable limits that not everybody understands. And our bodies are going through huge emotional and physical stresses that we're trying to figure out how just to make it through sometimes and how to reduce it. Arguably, we lose our identity. We lose our identity, just like I was shopping in that store. We lose it because they see us now as that caregiver versus our individual. And not all the time, but most of the time. Others see us as maybe the saint or the hero or the angel or that special person. Behind the scenes, though, what are you feeling? Most of us are feeling lonely, unappreciated, all these array of emotions that we're experiencing: anxiety, sadness, worry, whatever it would be. And so today I want to talk about sometimes our friendships fade, and not to blame anybody, but that's just the reality of the situation. First of all, no one, or maybe a friend, doesn't want to connect with us because they think we're busy, the or we've declined so many times because of certain situations, they don't even wanna ask anymore. And sometimes we decline because we just don't feel like it. Sometimes we decline because we can't, and caregiving's a priority. And we feel guilty over it, and then they kinda stay away. Or maybe even they stay away because they don't know what to do or what to say. I think you get it. I wanted to say that this because this is our reality. This is our new normal now. This is what our life is about right now. And I don't think a lot of people say it. I don't think a lot of us caregivers talk about it. So friends may stay away, like I said, and are afraid to connect because they don't know what to say, what to do. They don't even know how to help. And or friends may not even ask us anymore to coffee because or a movie because we've said no before, just like I said before. That's why I want to talk about what we can control, you and I can control, and what we need to do with those friends that we want to keep. They want to help us, but they just don't know how to help us in those situations. And here's where I'm going to throw in my personal opinion because sometime a simple text is not enough for me. A simple text by saying, I'm thinking about you and I know you're strong and I know you're courageous. That sometimes ticks me off even more. And, so sometimes that doesn't. So you have to figure out what you want or what else you want because sometimes that's not enough. So, first and foremost, you have to sit and you can't you can't sit and wait for a friend to connect. So many times I've heard from my clients in my caregiver cup circle that I don't have any friends anymore. Nobody wants to connect with me anymore. Nobody calls me anymore. Yeah, and sometimes that's true, but sometimes we create that ourselves and we can control it. So the big thing here you have to ask yourself is do you want to salvage and keep that relationship? You can't be the best friend right now, and you can't be in that world that used to be your friendship life. This friendship life has to be molded a little bit differently. And so a lot of times the friends that I want to keep, I've had to have some really good conversations with them by saying, I wanna still be friends with you, but you know what my situation is like, and I wanna explain it a little bit more, and you have to be honest with them. You have to be honest with how you're feeling, your emotions, not and you might wanna say, "I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I want you to just listen to me right now." You have to be realistic. Like for me, I'll use my example. I was working full time throughout my caregiving experience. I was running my business. I was taking care of my spouse. I was taking care of my parent. I was managing the house and trying to do everything and trying to keep all those plates spinning. And so I have to be realistic. I know I want to have time with you, but instead of quantity, I want to have quality time with you, and it's going to look different. And another thing is we may have to get creative right now. We might have to, like when I was in Milwaukee for those 6 weeks, I couldn't have my friends with me. I couldn't go out and have coffee with them. I had to go ahead and get creative, like texting or FaceTime or Zoom calls and doing that or gifts back and forth. Is it gifs or gifts, whatever it would be, and just sharing fun things with them outside of that. And I had to be saying, I don't always want to tell you everything. I want to hear what's going on from you so that I have something to feed my soul as well. And then you have to ask yourself too, when you're thinking through this, if roles were reversed, what would you do? I know now that you're a caregiver and you know another caregiver, you're going to know what to say and how to say it when you go and meet that person in the grocery store or when you're behind that person in church and you're going ahead and shaking hands with them. You can whisper in their ear to say, I'm thinking about you, that sort of thing, instead of saying, you got this, you are so courageous. No, just acknowledge that, you're here for them as well. So let me give you a couple of things, a couple of stories. Julie is one of my bestie friends. I met her in my 32 years of corporate life and working. In my first year, became my best friend, and she still is my best friend. She's godmother to my youngest son, and she knows that there are times where I just need to vent, and she knows how to just listen, but she also knows how to lift my spirits up and do things for me. When I wasn't able to be in my home for those 6 weeks during the stem cell transplant, I still had to take care of my mom. And she was physically pretty good, but emotionally, she needed the support. And so I created this little grid and asked my kids to help out, neighbors to help out, and friends. Julie would go ahead and sign up for time with my mom. And what was really neat is she knew what my mom liked and her junk food. My mom was a junk food person and a McDonald's person. And so she would call my mom up and saying, "Hey, can I bring you over some French fries? And maybe we could sit and watch the Golden Girls with you or whatever." And then Julie wouldn't hesitate to go ahead and FaceTime me during that time or take a picture or tape a fun video. So she always did things for me. And so the friend doesn't need to necessarily interact with you all the time, but their intentions of doing things really help. My other girlfriend, Denise, we used to go to the gym together all the time. Well, I gave up that gym connection because I couldn't go every single day and commit to a class at a specific time anymore. It just wasn't possible anymore. And so she's committed to checking in with me and then finding time where we can walk together. She would come to my house. We would walk around the neighborhood if that was more convenient, or we would connect on a Sunday morning really early before everything started and walk. And that made such a difference. But I also had to have that conversation to say, we can't do it like we used to. We have to go ahead and maybe do it once every other week. There was times where it was just once a month, but she stayed connected with me via text. So I'll be honest with you, I had to drop some friends and drop some weird word, but let go of some friends like the gym membership friends because I couldn't be there. Now that I'm retired, I don't have my work friends, so that's different. Even when we had that work at home and during the pandemics, friendships were different. So I wasn't in the office anymore. So the friendships went down, and then I'm more of an introvert, so that it's easier for me. I know extroverts it's harder for you, but instead of thinking of it as huge coworker friends, I just had a couple coworker friends that I connected with. We would do virtual lunches together or whatever. I also have a group of also have 2 groups of friends that I or 2 another examples of groups of friends I have as an entrepreneur or a business owner. I reached out and looked for friends that I could connect with virtually about my business. And I still have 2 accountability besties. I call them Amy and Naomi. And we try to connect every Thursday or every other Thursday. We have a messenger page that we keep, and we message back and forth. And that's a friendship that keeps going. And sure, it's not in person, but it's there. And then I also, when in the midst of my caregiving, I was part of a caregiving community support group, and we would get together, a couple times a month, facilitated by a coach, which now I do as well. And through that, we would stay connected. Well, I have a bestie from that caregiver group that we connect with pretty much every day. We do it via Voxer, and Voxer is an application that you can get on your phone. Let me see here once if I can show it to you. I don't want to maybe show it. It looks like this. If you see the bottom right there, it's right there. And it's only $3.99 a month. And it's kind of like a walkie-talkie. So you can voice chat and the person can respond right away on that. And it's or they can wait. It's a text, it's a video, it's you can send messages and it's private. It's away from your texting and everything. And so I only have a select few people that I use for it, but I love it because if I'm Voxering, I call it, and I'm talking on Voxer and talking, that person can be listening at the same time or it can be delayed and I catch it later. So I won't get into all the logistics. Just check it out if you're thinking about it. The last part of today's piece I want to talk about is I want to give you some ideas that's going to spark some ideas since you're a caregiver. I know the wording is wrong on the screen. We need social interaction as humans. And if we don't get that, we feel isolated. And some of us fear the loss of friends. And the more friends we lose, the more isolated we get. And that's an important piece. And so, some ideas and thoughts to going ahead and um, salvaging that um, or getting more friends or staying connected with people, I'm going to share some with you. Simple chats. Friends don't have to be these besties. You could form friendships with the person at the pharmacy counter that you see once a month. They get to know you, and you can say, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to go see Sharon or Bob or whatever it would be, or the grocery store cashier, or the receptionist at the doctor's office, or for me the cleaning gentleman, the janitor that I spoke with for every day for 6 weeks, and I got to know his family and his friends and what he did outside of work and so on. That is an idea. Another one is either maintain your hobby or start a new one and find people that are doing it. If you have the luxury to go to the hobby facility where you do it, maybe you like to paint and you go ahead well saying, well, once a week I'm going to go and paint with the girls or paint with the group. Or, I mean, there's so many online communities right now that you could be part of, but you could have a craft night and you could create a Zoom call with anybody that you have. You could go to a class, you could connect on Facebook. One of my clients, I think I shared this last week in the episode, she volunteers and she goes out and volunteers and does something. And those are the people where those are the most positive people. If you want to stay positive and optimistic and find true friendships, those are usually the people that are volunteering. They're giving up their time for a cause. I know I got a message the other day saying they're looking for people to go ahead and plant flowers in the boulevards by our home, and it doesn't matter if you want to give a half hour, you want to give an hour or whatever, we're looking for help. I mean, if I'm a gardener, that might appeal to me, whatever it would be. You could join a walking group or a biking group or, whatever group it is. Ask a friend to come over and sit on your patio. I can't get away this week, which I feel horrible about, but come on over and I'll put some iced tea on or I'll, have a hot of coffee and we can go ahead and sit. The last one too, there's book clubs are not dead. Book clubs are coming back up again. And there's so many book clubs that are coming up virtually or in person. That might be something. If you love to read, you love to talk about something, that might be your clue. So, okay, I want to end today. Well, before I do that, I want to say that was my list. You probably can come up with other ideas, but when you start thinking outside of the box and looking for ways to go ahead and stay connected with people, that's a beautiful thing, because sometimes our friendships are going to remain, but most of the time, we're going through a transition in our life and we're ready to go through a new chapter and we form new friendships. It's just crazy how, if you think about the friends that you had in school to your 20s, to your 30s, when you were a parent, to now when you're an early nest or an empty nester, things change all the time. I had so many friends when my kids were in high school that I connected with, but we don't stay formally connected. Now I see them on occasion and I ask how their kids are doing, but we lost that commonality and that's okay. Now you have the commonality maybe with somebody in a hobby or caregiving or your work or your passion, whatever it would be. Okay. So, for most of us involved in this intense caregiving that we're doing, it's not likely we can maintain this active social life and be with others all the time. Caregiving is a time in our lives when we must concentrate on our loved ones' well being. However, you know me, I have the Caregiver Cup podcast, and that's an important piece for our own well being. We have to think about that as well. And I am an advocate on filling your cup first, and so we should at least do the bare minimum to maintain an outside friendship and having outside friendships and trying to go ahead and spark that. The day we day will come when we as caregivers will end our journey with our loved one. Hopefully they're healed and they're better, but with aging parents, we lose them and we will need our friends again. We will need either our old friends again, or we will need new friends, whatever the situation will be. And we'll have to acclimate to a new normal. I think of my mom when she was caregiving for my dad and married to him for 57 years. He lost his life to pancreatic cancer. And then she became a widow and she had to create and form new friendships. And that was extremely hard for her. Some of her friends stayed, but most of her friends kind of dwindled away because they were friends that my mom and dad had. And with my mom moving back to the city that I live in, she had to go ahead and find new friends. So if we take an interest in what our friends are doing and work to find common ground, then they are more likely to reciprocate or help us through the challenging stage and still be around when our caregiving days are over. And so that's an important piece to remember. It's just communicating to them. And my challenge for you today is grab that text, grab that phone. Next time you see them, saying, "Hey, I know I've been away for a while. I know you understand." I hope they do. And let's try to find a way to connect. I might have to get creative because I can't do what I used to do in the past. And I want to still be friends with you. What an opening. That would be an opening and would be a great way to go ahead and do it, and you'd feel better about it. So I'm going to end today. First of all, thank you for listening to another episode of the Caregiver Cup podcast. I truly appreciate you. I'd love to hear your comments and your feedback on this episode. And more importantly, if you know of somebody that this episode can help, share this with them. Get them to go ahead and watch this YouTube video or tell them about my podcast. And as always, when you fill your cup, knowing you need it, and it's not selfish. You can be the best caregiver that you can be when you fill your cup. As a matter of fact, when you put yourself first, you're going to feel better. You're going to have more energy. You're going to boost your mood. If you get that sleep, you're going to feel energized and you're going to be a better person and be able to go ahead and make it through the challenges and stress a lot easier. So we'll talk to you again next week. Thank you again for listening and watching. Bye for now.